Montana Territory, 1875. The spring thaw had loosened winter's grip on the frontier town of Silver Creek, but Clara Thomas still felt the cold deep in her bones. At 25, she'd heard the whispers that followed her like shadows, that she was becoming a spinster, that her chance for marriage had passed, that she was too old for the young men seeking wives among the new arrivals from the East. "Another letter from your sister?" Mabel Johnson asked, peering over her spectacles as Clara entered the small frontier post office where she worked 6 days a week. "Yes," Clara replied, tucking the envelope into her dress pocket. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a sensible bun, a few strands escaping to frame her face. The pale blue dress she wore had been mended twice at the sleeves, but it was clean and proper, just like everything else in her carefully ordered life. "Catherine has another baby on the way, her fourth." Mabel nodded sympathetically. "And you helping to raise her first two after your parents passed. Life has a way of moving on without us sometimes." That was the truth that haunted Clara. While she had spent her youth caring for her sister's children after the influenza took their parents, her own prospects had dwindled. Now, at 25, she found herself alone in Silver Creek, having followed the railroad west in search of independence and perhaps a second chance. But the frontier was even less forgiving of unmarried women her age than Boston had been. "The frontier is no place for an unmarried woman," she whispered to herself as she sorted the mail. "I was foolish to think otherwise." This had become her mantra, her protection against disappointment. The West might offer freedom and opportunity for men, but for women, especially those past their prime marrying years, it only offered loneliness disguised as independence. A commotion outside drew her attention to the window. A cattle drive was arriving, bringing with it the usual chaos of dust, noise, and cowboys. Clara sighed. The seasonal arrival of trail hands always unsettled the town's routine. Young men flush with pay looking for whiskey and women, neither of which interested her. "I'll finish the sorting," she told Mabel, retreating to the back room, better to stay out of sight until the cowboys moved on to the saloon. Her peaceful retreat was short-lived. The bell above the door jangled and a voice called out, "Afternoon, ma'am, any mail for the Sutter Ranch?" Clara composed herself and stepped back into the front room, ledger in hand. The cowboy standing before her wasn't what she expected. Tall and broad-shouldered, yes, but there was a gentleness to his manner that seemed out of place. His hat was in his hands rather than on his head, revealing sandy brown hair in need of a trim. His face was clean-shaven, with only the hint of stubble along a strong jawline, and his eyes, a startling blue against his sun-darkened skin, met hers directly. "Sutter Ranch," she repeated, flipping through the ledger. "Yes, there are several letters and a package." She moved to the shelves, aware of his gaze following her. "Thank you kindly, miss." "Thomas, Clara Thomas." "Adam Sutter," he replied with a slight bow. "Just took over the running of my uncle's place north of town. This is my first time picking up the mail." Clara nodded, keeping her expression professional as she handed over the stack of correspondence. Their fingers brushed briefly and she pulled back as if burned. "Your uncle is Samuel Sutter. We heard he'd taken ill." Adam's smile dimmed. "Yes, ma'am, consumption. The doctor doesn't give him long. That's why he sent for me from Texas." "I'm sorry to hear that." Clara meant it. Samuel Sutter was one of the first settlers in the area, a gruff but fair man who always had a kind word for her. "Life out here can be mighty hard without family," Adam said, studying her with those piercing blue eyes. "Especially for a lady." Clara stiffened. "I manage just fine, Mr. Sutter. Silver Creek may be small, but it's civilized enough." His gaze lingered on her face. "I meant no offense, Miss Thomas. It's just that I know what it's like to be alone in a new place." Something in his tone made her look at him more carefully. At perhaps 24 or 25, Adam Sutter was younger than she was, if only by a little, but there was a weight to his words that suggested experience beyond his years. "Will you be staying long?" she asked, then blushed at her forwardness. "That depends on Uncle Samuel, I suppose, and whether this land takes to me." He smiled again, and this time it reached his eyes. "It's beautiful country." "Yes, it is." Clara found herself returning his smile despite her resolve to remain detached. The moment was broken by the arrival of more customers. Adam tipped his hat, promised to return for any additional mail, and departed. Clara watched him go, telling herself the flutter in her stomach was merely surprise at meeting someone new, nothing more. After all, what interest could a young, handsome rancher possibly have in her? 2 days later, Clara was closing the post office when a rider approached at a gallop. She recognized Adam Sutter immediately, though his face was grim rather than smiling. "Miss Thomas, thank God you're still here, I need your help." Before she could respond, he had dismounted and was standing before her, breathing hard. Uncle Samuel's taken a turn for the worse. "The doctor's away in Helena and the ranch hands are out with the herd. Mrs. Whitley, who's been nursing him, had to leave. Her daughter's time has come. I need someone who can read and write to help me record his last wishes. He's asking for paper and pen, but my hands," he held them up, showing the tremor. "Please, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important." Clara hesitated only a moment. "Let me get my shawl." The ride to the Sutter ranch took nearly an hour, with Clara perched behind Adam on his horse, her arms wrapped hesitantly around his waist. The intimacy of the position made her cheeks burn, but necessity overcame propriety. Samuel Sutter was indeed dying. His breathing was labored, his skin the color of old paper. But his mind was clear as he dictated his final wishes to Clara, who wrote them carefully while Adam sat by the bed, holding his uncle's hand. It was nearly midnight when the old man finally slept. Clara's eyes burned with fatigue and tears as she finished the last page. "You should rest," Adam said softly. "The storm's blown in now, you can't return to town tonight, there's a spare room you can use." It was meant for Uncle Samuel's housekeeper, but he never hired one. Clara knew she should object to the impropriety, but exhaustion won out. "Thank you." In the small but clean room, Clara removed only her shoes before lying down fully dressed on the narrow bed. Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded her. The events of the day, the deathbed, the unfamiliar ranch house, the feeling of Adam's solid presence beside her as they tended to his uncle, kept her mind spinning. She had maintained her distance from others since arriving in Silver Creek, convinced that at her age, friendship and certainly romance were unlikely. Yet something about Adam Sutter had breached her defenses in just 2 brief meetings. "Foolish," she whispered to herself. "He's younger than you and soon to be a wealthy rancher. Don't imagine things that can never be." Samuel Sutter died peacefully just before dawn. Clara had risen early and was preparing coffee when she heard Adam's footsteps on the stairs. One look at his face told her everything. "He's gone," Adam said simply, "but he went easy thanks to you." Clara set aside the coffee pot and went to him, propriety forgotten as she took his hands in hers. "I'm so sorry for your loss." Adam squeezed her hands gently. He was ready, said he held on just long enough to see the ranch pass to good hands. He looked around the kitchen as if seeing it for the first time. This place was his dream. "Now it's mine to carry on." Over the next week, Clara found herself drawn into the arrangements for Samuel's funeral. The small church in Silver Creek was filled to capacity with ranchers, townspeople, and even a few Crow Indians from the nearby reservation who had respected the old man. Adam, as the sole heir, stood tall and stoic, accepting condolences with quiet dignity. When it was over, he approached Clara where she stood with Mabel Johnson. "Miss Thomas, I want to thank you again for your help. Uncle Samuel would have appreciated your kindness." "It was nothing anyone else wouldn't have done," Clara replied, aware of Mabel's curious gaze. "Nevertheless, I'm grateful." Adam hesitated, then added, "I was hoping I might call on you sometime. Perhaps this Sunday if you're free." Clara felt her cheeks warm and Mabel's elbow nudge her side. "That would be acceptable, Mr. Sutter." His smile was like sunshine breaking through clouds. "Adam, please." As he walked away, Mabel leaned close. Well, well, it seems Samuel Sutter's nephew has taken a shine to our Clara." "Don't be ridiculous," Clara muttered. "He's just being polite. Besides, he's too young for me." "Pish-posh, the boy's what, 25, and handsome as the day is long, you'd be a fool not to at least entertain his company." Clara shook her head. "You know as well as I do what people would say. They already whisper that I'm too old to be unmarried. Imagine what they'd say if I started keeping company with a younger man." "Since when do you care what people say?" Mabel challenged. "You came west alone, didn't you? That takes courage." Don't tell me you've lost it now when something good might be on the horizon. Clara had no answer for that. Sunday arrived with clear skies and mild weather. Clara changed her dress 3 times before settling on a pale yellow frock she'd made the previous summer but never worn. She let her blonde hair down from its usual severe bun, securing it with combs at the sides so that it fell in soft waves past her shoulders. When Adam arrived at her small rented room behind the milliner's shop, his expression of appreciation made her self-consciousness fade. "You look beautiful, Miss Thomas," he said sincerely. "Clara, please," she replied, gathering her courage, "and thank you." They walked through town to a small meadow by the creek that gave the settlement its name. Adam carried a basket that proved to contain a picnic lunch of cold chicken, bread, and early strawberries. "I can't take credit for the food," he admitted as they settled on a blanket. "Mrs. Peterson at the hotel packed it for me when I mentioned I was calling on you." Clara laughed. "No doubt half the town knows we're here together." "Does that bother you?" Adam asked, suddenly serious. She considered her answer carefully. "It should. Propriety is important, especially for a woman alone, but strangely, no, it doesn't bother me as much as I thought it would." "Good," Adam's smile returned, "because I'd like to keep calling on you, Clara Thomas. If you'll permit it." Over the next few weeks, Adam became a regular visitor to the post office. Sometimes he brought small gifts, a book of poetry, fresh flowers from the meadow, once a length of blue ribbon that matched her eyes perfectly. Clara found herself looking forward to his visits, arranging her hair with more care each morning, wearing her nicest dresses. The town noticed. How could they not? The handsome young rancher courting the post office clerk who was practically a spinster, as Widow Harding put it within Clara's hearing. "They say I'm too old," she whispered to Adam one evening as they sat on the bench outside the church after a town social. "Too old for courting, too old for dreams." Adam's expression darkened. "Who says such things?" Clara shook her head. "Everyone, no one, it doesn't matter, they're right in a way. I'm 25, Adam. Most women my age have been married for years with children already half grown." "And does that make you worth less somehow?" He took her hand, his grip firm and warm. "Clara, age is just a number. It's experience that shapes us, and yours has made you into the woman I admire. Strong, kind, unafraid to face whatever comes." "I am afraid," she admitted. "Afraid of caring for you, and then losing you when you realize there are younger, prettier girls who'd be happy to catch your eye." Adam's laugh surprised her. "Have you seen me looking at anyone but you since I arrived in Silver Creek?" "No, but—" "No buts," he touched her cheek gently. "I came west expecting to bury my uncle and inherit a ranch. I never expected to find someone who makes me feel like I've finally come home." Clara leaned into his touch, allowing herself to believe, just for a moment, that what was growing between them could be real and lasting. Their courtship progressed through the summer, each day bringing them closer. Adam invited her to the ranch to see the improvements he was making: a larger kitchen, a second bedroom added to the main house, a garden plot cleared and fenced. "You're planning for a family," Clara observed as he showed her the changes. "I'm planning for our family," Adam replied, then stopped, looking suddenly uncertain. "That is, if you'd consider it. Becoming my wife, I mean." Clara's heart seemed to stop. "Adam, are you certain I'm—" "If you say you're too old, I swear I'll toss you in the horse trough," he interrupted, his expression half serious. "I love you, Clara Thomas. I want to build a life with you, here on this land." Tears filled her eyes. "People will talk." "Let them, we'll be too busy being happy to listen." Their kiss was sweet and full of promise, sealing an unspoken agreement between them. But happiness on the frontier was never guaranteed. 2 weeks later, as Clara was preparing to close the post office, a rider thundered into town, his horse lathered and heaving. "Where's the sheriff?" the man shouted. "Raiders hit the Sutter place. Burn the barn, stole horses." Clara's blood turned to ice. Is Adam all right?" The rider looked down at her, his expression grim. "Took a bullet defending his men. Doc's with him now, but it don't look good." Clara didn't remember running to the livery stable or persuading the reluctant owner to saddle a horse for her. The ride to the Sutter ranch passed in a blur of fear and desperate prayer. The main house was untouched, but the barn was a smoldering ruin. Ranch hands moved about with rifles, watching the horizon warily. One recognized Clara and pointed to the house. "He's in there, miss. Doc's still working on him." Clara burst through the door to find Adam pale and unconscious on his bed. The doctor bent over him, extracting a bullet from his shoulder. The basin beside the bed was red with blood. "Miss Thomas," the doctor acknowledged without looking up. "If you're going to faint, do it elsewhere. If you're going to help, wash your hands and hold this basin steady." Clara did as she was told, her terror subsiding into a focused calm. For hours, she assisted the doctor, changing bandages, brewing willow bark tea for the fever that followed, bathing Adam's face and chest with cool cloths when he burned hot in the night. 3 days passed before Adam's fever broke. Clara, exhausted beyond measure, was dozing in a chair by his bed when she felt his fingers touch her hand. "You're here," he whispered, his voice weak but his eyes clear. "Of course I'm here," she replied, moving to sit on the edge of the bed. "Where else would I be when you need me?" A ghost of his usual smile crossed his lips. "Marry me, Clara, not someday, now, as soon as I can stand." Clara shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You need to recover first." "There's time." "The raiders took that illusion from me," Adam interrupted. "Life out here is too uncertain to waste a single day. I love you, you love me, the rest is just details." Looking into his eyes, Clara knew he was right. The frontier had no patience for hesitation or convention. Life and love were too precious to squander. "Yes," she said simply, "as soon as you can stand." It took 2 more weeks before Adam could leave his bed, and another before the preacher agreed he was strong enough for a wedding. By then, the entire town knew of Clara's devotion during his recovery. The whispers about her age had given way to admiration for her courage and steadfastness. They were married on a crisp September morning, with golden aspen leaves drifting down around them as they exchanged vows in the meadow by Silver Creek. Clara wore a new dress of deep blue silk, a gift from Adam, with the blue ribbon he'd given her woven through her hair. "You've made an honest woman of her just in time," Widow Harding remarked loudly to Mabel Johnson during the wedding breakfast. "She's been living out at that ranch for weeks." Mabel snorted, saving his life more like, "Besides, she's only 25, plenty of time yet." Clara, overhearing, caught Adam's eye across the room. He winked at her and she felt a blush rise to her cheeks, not from embarrassment but from joy. She was 25, yes, but in Adam's love she had found a second youth. A chance to begin again with all the wisdom her years had given her and all the hope that new love brings. That night, in the privacy of their bedroom at the ranch, their home now, truly and legally, Clara confessed her lingering insecurity. "I still hear them sometimes," she admitted as Adam held her close. "The voices saying I'm too old for this happiness." Adam's arms tightened around her. "Then listen to my voice instead. You're perfect exactly as you are, and we have a lifetime ahead of us to prove all those voices wrong." "A lifetime," Clara repeated, letting the word and all its promise fill her heart. "I like the sound of that." Spring came again to Montana territory, bringing with it new life. The Sutter Ranch flourished under Adam's management and Clara's practical efficiency. The barn had been rebuilt, stronger than before. The garden Clara had planted yielded its first crops, and in the bedroom that had once been intended for a housekeeper, a cradle stood ready. "Are you afraid?" Adam asked, his hand resting on Clara's swollen belly as they watched the sunset from the porch. "A little," she admitted, "but not of what people will say anymore." She covered his hand with hers, feeling their child move beneath their joined fingers. "Besides, 26 isn't so old to be having a first baby." Adam laughed and pulled her closer. "Not old at all, in fact I'd say we're just getting started." Clara smiled and leaned against her husband's strength. The voices that had once whispered she was too old had fallen silent, replaced by the sound of their love, steady as a heartbeat, constant as the western sky, and young as the new life growing within her. On the frontier she had learned it wasn't age that mattered. It was courage, resilience, the capacity for love, and in those things Clara Thomas Sutter had found herself to be younger than she had ever imagined possible.